Welcome to Lost Without Japan, a travel podcast about the life-changing experiences of exploring Japan and those moments we would be lost without. For your listening pleasure, allow me to introduce your very own Kanko Guido, Michael.
Welcome to a special Lost Without Moments bonus interview episode of the Lost Without Japan podcast. Our biweekly podcast is focused on getting you to Japan for your first visit or to make your next adventure to Japan even better than your last. This is your director of travel for TKIC Studio Productions, coming to you with positive thoughts and excitement for your next journey to Japan and his own return late this year or early next. I would like to thank you all for giving me a bit of time today for this interview, and I truly hope this podcast finds you in a good place or on the path to a better one, no matter how it may seem at the moment. We could all use a beacon like this to help guide us during these times, and I hope that Japan and this show will become that for you. If you're new to the podcast, welcome. And if you're a returning Lost Without Japan listener, thank you again for your time and returning once more. Today's interview episode is with returning guest Jeff Aasgaard from Rediscover Tours, who we were just talking, before we even started recording, was last on our show back in 2022, and the episode actually dropped, Jeff, in April of 2022. I will be including the link to that episode in today's show notes as well, if you'd like even more of Jeff and our talks and things like that. As today's talk is going to be focused more on changes that have happened since we last talked. And we were both at that time waiting for Japan to reopen its borders. So, welcome, Jeff.
Thank you very much for having me, Mike.
Thank you so much for making time again for our listeners and joining us today to geek out on Japan and just talk about all the services and opportunities you provide. Because I know, like last time we talked in this, not everybody likes doing their taxes, and not everybody likes, planning a bunch of things to make sure what potentially could be a once in a lifetime trip turns out fantastic. And I know if they reach out to you, they won't have to worry about it.
Yeah.
But before we get too far into today's episodes, what are the best ways to reach out to you or to look further into what you're doing yourself?
Yeah. The best place to see what we're doing is our website, rediscovertours.com. You can go there, check out some of the tours that we have. There's a form to fill out if you're looking to travel there. Fill out the form. You'll be put in contact with one of our team males, one of our sales crew, and they will go work with you, listen to you, design your trip, and help you, discover the beauty of Japan.
Excellent, Jeff. And I know, like I said, it's been a while. It's hard to believe it's about to be 2025 here,
Yeah.
coming up soon. We did, we did share a little bit, and go into depth about your background and things
Yeah.
for Japan and stuff. But do you want to go ahead and kind of give a brief synopsis about yourself, and then we can get into some questions after that?
Yeah. Moved to Japan in the early 90s with my parents. My dad was a engineer at Ford Motor Company, and they had a joint venture with Mazda, so moved to Hiroshima there. I was still a dependent, so Ford would pay for my round trip tickets, which was great. Studied Japanese at Shudo Daigaku, or Shudo University, for a term. Didn't do very well, but still studied there. And yeah, fell in love with Japan. Changed my major to Japanese business. It was called International Business Japanese Sequence. Studied for that, graduated, then worked as a furniture sales rep for a year. That's not really what I wanted, so I decided to pack my bags, moved to Japan. This was before the internet, so I just put my stuff in my bag and went. Found a job teaching English. Taught English for about 10 years, to get a visa, get money, and to really improve my Japanese language skills. Studied Japanese quite a bit. Met my wife there, and we started Rediscover. At that time, we had a company called Japanese Guest Houses, which made reservations at Japanese inns, ryokan, you might know of. And that went really well. Had a lot of staff. Recently closed that down to focus on custom tours, which is what my team and I are doing right now. We build everything from, you know, you know, we just take care of everything. So, you don't have to, it makes it really easy. But I lived for a total of 14 years in Japan. And then we moved to the US back in 2007. So my kids, I had two kids at the time there. They were, I think, 9 and 4.5. Raised them here. My son now lives in Tokyo, and my daughter is graduating from Michigan State University soon. And she's hoping to find a job in Osaka in design. So she's a graphic artist. So she's looking at it. She also did an internship this past summer at a Japanese firm. And, she's looking to move back, probably live with my mother-in-law while she's there. I head back to Japan every year, at least once a year, for about 6 weeks or so. Work in our office in Japan with my team there. And yeah, so Japan's been, front and center my whole life. Just about as an adult, kind of.
Your mother-in-law has to be, I'm sure, just a bit excited to have that opportunity. That's pretty awesome.
I don't know how much she knows about it yet, but she is going to come to Japan, or no, sorry, she's going to come to the US later on this year to see my daughter graduate. So my daughter's graduating early, so she's going to come and spend about 3 weeks with us here in Michigan. Hopefully, she'll see some snow and she'll see my daughter graduate from a massive university there. And yeah, it's going to be her second time. But yeah, having her granddaughter a little bit closer, I think she'll like that. I think they'll both like it. It'll be good for both of them.
Well, you may have only done the semester, in Japan, but you've already answered my first question, so you're already gold star for me for how you became the founder of Rediscover Tours and getting that set up with your wife. That is pretty awesome. To be able to have something that you can do together. And I
Yeah.
can see some pros and cons, for both, for both sides of
Well,
that.
she doesn't work for us anymore. She helped us out for like the first year until we can, hire staff, have enough money to hire people. Yeah, because that did not work. Because, if you're working with your spouse and you get home from work, you just want to be able to complain about work and not have to worry about someone knowing the correct answer, right? You want to be saying, "Oh my gosh, blah blah was horrible today," and they're like, "Well, actually, you were the one who was stupid," and like going, "Yeah, but that's not what I want to think about right now." So it worked out well for us for that first year, and helps out when my partner and I were still, my business partner were working with him. So it was just three of us getting that up and going, and it made it possible until we could get people, full time staff and part time staff in doing the work. And I have amazing team in Japan. I can't express enough. Just it's not very Japanese of me to say my team is amazing, because in Japan, as you know, you usually will say about your own group, you usually won't boast about it. That's not considered cool. But as an American, we boast about our own group, right? We're great. My wife's a good cook. And, or, but in Japan, he's like, my wife is not a very good cook. She's only got 1 star in Michelin and she really needs to work on it. Right. So it is a different cultural thing. But being an American, I'll say, the team that we have, I truly blessed with just how amazing they are. Their dedication to excellence, their dedication to trips of experience is something that, is phenomenal, and showing people the beauty of Japan. Because as you know, Japan has quite a bit of beauty to it.
Really does. And I can imagine, being able to do something that you're passionate about, and then being able to make an impact with the
Yeah.
people that are reaching out to you in the way you are. That's a lot like a teacher, my friend, a lot like a teacher there. And so, some regards,
Definitely one of the
Uh,
biggest things that I have to do is teach them, when people come, hey, I want to go to Japan. Great. Why do you want to go to Japan? Because it looks cool. Okay. What looks cool about it? Because what looks cool to me is going to be different than what looks cool to somebody else. Like what you're saying, when you're going with your son to Japan on a trip, you're doing baseball, you're
Yep.
doing, guy things more. You said you're going to hopefully head up with your daughter soon, and you're going to be doing different things and seeing a very different side of Japan. So we always want to make sure that we're designing our travelers' trips and not our trips to Japan, if that makes sense. We want to make sure that they are, if they want to go have a geisha dinner, great. We set that up. If they, want to just wander around, Shibuya for an hour, izakaya tour, restaurant tour, then we set that up because we really want them to, you know, have that Japanese experience the way that they want. And, for me, my favorite thing is wandering around. I lived there for 14 years. I had the opportunity to do that a lot. I could get completely lost in a neighborhood and not have to worry, oh, this is my only chance to see Osaka. And I just wandered around this neighborhood that's not very interesting. I should have gone over to there. So it's a bit different for us. We want to make sure that our travelers are, which kind of area would be fun to wander around in. And, the thing that's really nice about Japan is you can just wander around. You can go down the deepest, darkest alleyway and still basically, be safe. So that's part of what we do. We listen, we talk to them, and teach them quite a bit about Japan, trying to make sure that they understand, why they're going to Kanazawa, why you can't do a day trip from Kanazawa to Hakone or something like that. Like, well, it looks close, but the trains don't quite work that way. It's going to be like a 5-hour trip. Is that what you want to do? Like, no. So yeah, there is a lot of teaching involved in that, and it's a lot of fun. And I love reading our travelers' reviews once they get back. Say, that was great. Everything was really organized, and everything was done. And it's fantastic to read those things.
100%, 100%. And when we've talked back and forth by email from time to time,
Yeah,
and keep in touch, but
yeah.
I did want to ask you, how was it with your first trip, back after things had opened up? Because with
Mm.
your business and things, you go back for, pretty frequently, but having like a 3-year gap, between visits, what was that like for you when you're able to return again?
Yeah, well, I have a permanent residency, so mine was actually only 2 years. I was able to get
Okay.
back a year before everybody else opened, and it was quiet. It was weird. It was everyone was still wearing masks and being very cautious, staying far away from each other. And you're like, okay, you know,
Yep.
that's what works. And Japanese kind of they liked having it back Japan back to themselves without the tourists around a little bit. However, they also realized that the tourists bring in a lot of money, right, and help support the reason why Kyoto and other beautiful areas Takayama that are able to survive is because of tourism, right? And so they understand that when the doors finally opened, there was a huge rush. And I remember getting over 200 contacts a week from people that were looking just to get, I forget the accident, it was like a EFR something. They had to have this special certificate saying that a Japanese travel agency is arranging your trip and inviting you to Japan. That only lasted for a few months before they realized that it was, just insane to do it. I get why they did it, but as soon as it started, Japanese, different companies would say, "Oh yeah, we'll look through your itinerary and we'll just make you this form for $1,000 to $2,000." And there was a lot of that going on. We were able to issue forms, but we wanted to make sure that our travelers were, getting our experience and actually doing the trips that we were planning for them, and not just rubber stamping a certificate and charging them a lot of money. But that, I did not expect it to go from 0 to like 200 contacts in a week. That, it's not a huge number, but it's still, for one, back then I think we had 3 people in Japan, and it was me in the US because we obviously went down to bare minimum. And it was, we just couldn't handle it. I was just like, we can't do it. And then the government changed the laws, and that was nice. But yeah, it didn't, there was no ramp up um at all with tourism going to Japan. It's kind of like getting launched off an aircraft carrier, or what my image would be of that. Not that I've done it, but from the videos I've watched. But it's just like, you're just like, it went to zero. And then we were back to profitability within a few months of this going. People were coming up really quickly, saying, when our lead time at that time was a couple of weeks, we can get out, get everything done. Now we need about 45 days or so lead time because we want to do it right. But then it was just like, okay, here you go. Here's going up. And yeah. And since then we've hired a bunch more people and been able to, survive. Yeah. But that going back that year when it was empty was weird. Uh, that was a strange experience going back with out people and Japanese people kind of looking at you. And then you speak to them. They're like, okay, you've lived here, you live here, you know Japanese well enough. Um, but yeah, it was kind of nice not having it as crowded. But Japan's always crowded, so you can't really. The biggest thing was Kyoto. Kyoto wasn't as crowded. All right, so and then there was also, I think Kyoto really really thought about how to redo tourism. So now you'll find areas where they say this is not this is a private street, please, don't come down here, don't take photos. There's nobody really checking, but you want to respect these people's privacy. Their family may have been living there for 300 years, you don't know, right? It's not like they moved into this area and you're like, you moved into this knowing this. That might not have been the case for them. So there are more rules with that. And, like I said, there's nobody really checking per se, but you want to be respectful while you're doing there and saying, okay, this is not a street that I can wander down in Kyoto. Just avoid it. Don't take a lot of photos in that area and just, enjoy Kyoto, because we all want Kyoto to remain as beautiful as it is without getting destroyed by over tourism or, yeah, just too many
Yeah,
people in too small of an area.
100%. Because I've been there the same. When it is like you can't move.
Yeah.
So yeah, a balance would definitely be nice
Yeah.
in that regard.
Yeah.
And then, but it is like, yeah, having you be able to reach out to you too, to know those things. If you're not listening to a show like mine, or you may not know, you just may be like, this is a place I've always wanted to go.
Yeah.
Going in as informed as possible is great. And one of my
Definitely.
favorite comments that you made during our last talk was that it was indeed okay to be a tourist, to take everything in that you can on your visit, and that is something. Like, it's important to know the areas, like, that you can or cannot go into.
Yeah.
But overall, how has people's views been for your groups and things that you're taking through?
Well, we do very small trips. At the largest we'll do is 12 people. So we're not bringing in a busload of 60 people. Most of our trips are custom made up to, about 2 people. So it has that, they don't know that they're on a tour per se. We don't have the flag holding uh guides that are talking into a microphone, which is fine for some people. Our tours don't do that. The private guides will take them to certain, to different areas. But what our private guides will do is have a conversation with them, with the traveler, and we'll take them, say, okay, I like temples, but maybe I only want to do 2 or 3, because after a while, a temple amazingly
Is it typical?
beautiful, but you can see too many beautiful temples. As I tell our travelers, it's like when you travel to Europe. You can see too many beautiful churches and castles. Right? It doesn't mean that those castles aren't cool to look at, that they aren't amazing in themselves, but after a while, you can kind of glaze over with just the amount of beauty. So our guides will go and talk with people, and we'll also talk with them, before they go to Japan, what do you want to see? What do you want to do? So our tourists aren't, they'll do some touristy things. They might do the go-kart drive in Tokyo, right? They might do the, you know, a samurai cutting, tatami mat cutting thing like that, right? The tamashigiri, which is kind of touristy, but those things, you're a tourist, and that's fine to do. Or go to this Instagram location because you can get that
Yes.
one angle that's really cool. Okay, that's what you want to do. My wife loves doing stuff like that. Me, it's not as important, but we don't want them to be, rushed in, pounding the same place all the time. And we also like to get our guides, and even when they don't have guides, to get to places that a tourist won't necessarily visit easily. So, and you've been to Kyoto before. There's the standards. There's Ginkakuji. There is, Kiyomizudera, those sorts of things, Shiminari. And everybody thinks, I'm going to be smart. I'm going to go early in the morning before the tourists show up, not realizing that everybody has the same plan, right?
Yes.
But
Yes.
there are other places, kind of around the corner, so to speak, that are still very, very beautiful, that are there to discover. And the smaller temples, smaller shrines, I've always liked those more than the big famous ones, just because of the number of people. Granted, I was, lived in Japan 14 years, go back every year for, 6 weeks or so. So it's not as necessary for me to always go to these places and to be crammed back. But we're also trying to get people to go outside of Tokyo to some of those more, you know, less known places that are a little bit harder to get to, that are still really, really nice and interesting. So yeah, don't know how much that answered the question, but we definitely do want people to be respectful so that Japan can continue to, remain beautiful and not have it, turn into just
But,
tourist and kind of a, theme park problem.
I mean, yeah, and like you said, if it's a small group like that, could be people with friends, other things that's there, so you're not sticking out as much, and probably opens up different things you can't get into if you're with a group of 40, 60, whatever people, to get to do that.
Yeah.
So it really is. And one of the things Jeff and I have in common, as well as does my son, who did 40,000 steps in a day in Hiroshima, is the love of getting, walking around and getting lost in Japan
Yep.
and getting yourself really immersed while you're there, and find something you would honestly have missed otherwise. Has anything stood out to you from your recent trips when you were able to, if you were able to get the time to wander, my friend?
Yeah. I always take time to wander. I even no matter what, or I do a lot of cycling, mountain biking, things like that. And what I call those times is my brain dumping. So my brain is constantly thinking, doing things, and I just need to like get away from everything and just let my brain kind of do what it wants to do, because it's going to do that no matter what. This past summer, we were there in July and August because my father-in-law passed away, and we had to go to the Hatsubon, which is the first year Obon. So Obon is kind of the Day of the Dead sort of idea, where ancestors come back to Japan, and you go to the cemetery and everything. So this is when we actually took him out of the home and brought him to the cemetery and put him in. And that's always done in August. August in Japan is not a great place for me, being, living in Michigan. When it's in the high 90s every day, I tend not to
Yes.
do well. Get what's called natsubate. Natsubate is translated as summer fatigue.
Okay.
And, we're just kind of like, your brain is going, you can't drink enough water to cool yourself off. It's like having a fever all the time, even though you're healthy. So I didn't do as much this year, but near our office in Kawanishi near Osaka, there's a neighborhood that up in the mountains. And so I would just wander around there, just climb up the mountains in the neighborhood, and just, you know, be completely in a normal Japanese setting. So I like that. And, our base is Osaka. And so I always wander around somewhere in Osaka in the Umeda area, just north of Hankyu Station. is this up and coming trendy neighborhood. And it has all of these Showa buildings. So Showa was the period before what it ended in the late 80s, I believe. So it was like 40s to the 80s, something like that. It was ended up being 63 years in 1 week. I know that because I was there when the day the emperor died, and it was Showa 64, but Showa 64 only lasted 1 week. So I have some Showa 64 coins, which is kind of cool because they only were made for 1 week. Probably
Yep.
doubled in value up to 20 yen now.
At least 2 yen. Yeah,
But
yeah,
yeah,
right.
so I mean, great growth, not a lot of value. But my daughter and I would wander around in these neighborhoods, and that I really enjoyed, just kind of discovering what the new kind of hip area of it is, what the kids are doing, how they're dressing bizarre ways, which I think is great because you know that's the only time that you can really do it. I can't go as a 67-year-old guy. I can't really wander around in hips, in these bizarre clothes. But they're having fun and they're discovering things, and it was just a lot of fun to really wander around in that area. Of course, as I always say, once guys my age discover someplace, a new area, that means it's on its way out. But uh, but that yeah, so that's what I enjoy, just different neighborhoods and just seeing how this old nasty neighborhood has revitalized itself into something else, and that has good and bad points. But just seeing it and people kind of appreciating Showa Japan.
I'll take it. So I have to. That's like it is anything that you can find because you never know if it's going to be there. Like when you check it out again, unfortunately or fortunately,
Yeah,
But with Rediscover tours,
yeah,
being that some of our listeners may have missed that episode that we had last time.
yeah,
Um, what can you tell us about what Rediscover Tours offers someone looking to travel to Japan? I know we've hit upon that already a bit, but
yeah.
this is all your time now.
Okay. Well, what Rediscover Tours does is we work with travelers to design their own trip. We will take care of all accommodations, guides, activities that they want to do, and domestic transportation. So they're able to, your travelers are able to travel in Japan without having to deal with what hotel, how to get from point A to point B. Also helping them to not make mistakes like staying in the wrong neighborhood as adverse to staying in the neighborhood that they want to do. And for everybody that's a bit different. Some people really like to stay in the Shinjuku area, and all of that's going on with there. Other people might want to be 2 stations away where it's a little bit quieter, but it's still Tokyo. It's still there's still probably 1,000 restaurants within walking distance of anywhere you are, right? So it still has all of that without as much. So depending on that, we'll send somebody to the airport, what I call a soft landing. So you come in after a long flight, they have your name, say, "Oh, okay, Mr. Smith, come here." You give them your hand, like take you in, and they'll travel either by charter taxi or by train to their hotel. They'll check them in. They'll also review the tour organizer, make sure that they're hooked up with Line, because we have a Line account,
Yes.
Line business account that we use to communicate with travelers. And that just, like we had a traveler actually yesterday, she contacted us and said, "You know what, we're a little bit tired. Can we meet our guide at 10 o'clock instead of 9 o'clock? We're not looking to, have him stay at past the normal time that they was going to do, but can we do it?" Say, "Yes, we can do that." So we contacted their guide and were able to do it. We had enough time, luckily, and the guide was flexible enough to say that. But really, it's just making it so that you don't have to worry about what you're doing. And travelers will come in and they'll right in the beginning they're like, "Oh, I want to do this, and this." And I'm going, "Really? You think it's a great, here's what's going to be happening. Here's what's going to, are you okay with this? If you want to take a day trip from Tokyo to Hiroshima, great. We can do it. It's a 5-hour trip by bullet train or so. But yeah, it's possible. And, is that what you want to do? And they're like, yeah, that's what we want to do. Okay, fine. But we will let them know when they're making a mistake or potential mistake and when they're doing, or if it's done well so that they're not, kind of making a star across Japan all over the place, but you're traveling kind of in a loop or in a way that makes sense. We tried to keep all travel times under 3 hours because we figure that's kind of the limit of a lot of people in one day. And if it goes longer than that, then, okay, buy a bento box somewhere at some convenience store. Do a very Japanese thing, buy something to drink and just, do it that way. But we want people to be able to easily experience the beauty of Japan and not feel overwhelmed. Because as you know, if you plan your own trip, just like if you do your own taxes, right? It can be overwhelming. And as I like to tell people, doing your taxes is pretty easy. You're just putting numbers into boxes. But the trick is putting the right number in the right box, right? And having the right
Yep.
form so that everything goes. And if, you know, for some people, hiring a CPA to do their taxes make a lot of sense. For like us, for some people, having, hiring professional tour companies design your trip for you, work with you. And if that's what you're looking for, that's where we come in. And, we really do quite well with that. And just making it, if things do go bump in the night, one of our travelers a couple of weeks ago got an upset stomach. So we're like, he just kind of lost his desire to do anything. Okay. Here's, take it easy. Here's some places where you might be able to get some medication or something like that. And just really trying to take care of them. Our guides will also communicate between each other. So if you have a guide in Tokyo who's traveling around with you, and then you also have one in Kyoto, they will communicate, say, you know what? This traveler really does not like fish. So don't recommend a really nice fish restaurant. Okay, great. Now we know. Or they really like spicy food. They really, whatever it is, or their quirks. They hate shopping at this type of store. Great. We won't do that. We'll do this. And having all that communication coordinated really makes the trips a lot more enjoyable and makes it so that they don't, like I said before, make big mistakes. And for some people, doing their taxes is fun. For some people, planning their trip is fun. But for the people who that's not a fun thing, then that's what we'll go, and we'll make sure they're in hotels that match their style and that they're doing everything that they want to do. So in a nutshell, we just kind of take care of that whole thing for them so that they can just enjoy Japan and ask also, questions, and ask dumb questions. Sometimes, they'll think it's dumb. I don't think so, because you just don't know. Like, is tipping common in Japan? Like, no, not really. But if your guide does an excellent job and you want to give them a little bit, that's fine. Or should we bring presents and give to the guide? No, because the guide has enough things from different people. They don't want more stuff. If they do a great job, do that. Or even like going to a restaurant, having to explain to travelers that no, don't tip in Japan at a restaurant. If you try and you really want to be, do this, they will look at you like you're confused and give you your money back, kind of like you're a child with it. And that's really hard for Americans to get used to, because we're used to, wait, I can just leave without, that seems rude, but that's the way it is. Or if you're at a restaurant, as if you're at a restaurant and you need help, you raise up your hand and say, "Oi, sumimasen," or something like that, right? You do that in the States and you don't get good service. You have to make eye contact. You make eye contact in Japan like you do in the States, and people are like going, what is this weirdo doing? Why doesn't he just, shout out? So that difference of what is considered polite or manners and what's not varies. And so we help travelers understand that, and, that it's fine to wander around. We don't, usually we have guides only in one or two places, Tokyo, Kyoto, where it makes sense, because a lot of Japan you can see on your own without a guide. You can figure out how to get to, the gardens by yourself. And that, I think, is also part of the fun of that self, exploration, or spending more time looking at, dishes and less time looking at knives or vice versa, depending on what your interests are. And so that we want travelers to have that freedom also to be able to travel the way that they want and also sticking within their budget and just making it as good as we can for them.
Having the safety net can't be understated, but being at least flexible, like you said, throwing it out there like, hey, uh, going more than 3 hours in a day by Shinkansen probably not going to be as enjoyable as you think it will be. You may want to rethink that, but if you have the person like myself who's going to be going off because he wants to catch a band and he's going to be going from Osaka to Aomori, um,
Yeah.
you know, at least you could have that support of, like you said, making sure to help connect as much as possible to make that
Yeah.
work for them. Because if it's important for them, they'll do things like
Oh yeah.
spend an entire day on a train to catch a concert. It's like,
Exactly. And we, like I said before, we want to make sure that we're making their trip. So if you want to go to Osaka to Aomori, yeah, all of your tickets will be purchased for you. They'll be in an envelope. They're color coded. So all you have to do is say, okay, today is, January 1st, January 1st envelope. Here are my tickets. I go and I do that, and they're put in order. People will take it out and look at it and put them back in the wrong order, but they'll figure it out. But it'll have all of that for you. And if that's what you want to do, great. It's your trip, but we will make sure you understand what you're signing up for. And, do you want to go all express trains? Do you want to do some local trains with your luggage? Or if you did a trip like that, then we definitely recommend you take, there's a hotel to hotel luggage delivery service called Takubin. And we'll make sure, this is what this is for. Take your luggage, ship it over to there. That way you don't have to deal with that. I'm kind of a person that I like to show up like at the airport gate early. So I'm this cautious type of person. So I'll ship most of my bags there, but I generally will take, an overnight bag, but like 2 days just in case. Because that's the type of person I am. I'm a bit more cautious with that stuff. My wife, on the other hand, she's like, yeah, whatever. As long as I'm at the gate at least 45 seconds before it leaves, I'll be fine. She's missed flights, though I haven't. But, that's just the way I relax. But I let people also know this is the type of person I am so that
yeah,
they can make their decision on how they're going to do things. Same thing with traveling in August is beautiful in Japan. It's green, it's lush. And I let them know, listen, I live in Michigan right now. It's too hot for me. However, if you live in South Florida and the humidity doesn't bother you and these things, then it's a beautiful time to travel in Japan. And I just, like I said, I want people to experience the beauty of Japan in their way. And that's really what we're doing. That's why we, set up phone calls with travelers. We listen, make recommendations. We work on their itinerary until we find the ideal itinerary. Then we'll send it off to our team in Japan for a quote, give them a quote, usually like 4 or 5 pages in that details everything that they're going to do. And if they decide great, then we require a 20% non-refundable deposit with the balance due 45 days before the start of the trip. And we prepare a massive tour organizer for them. It's usually like 60, 70 pages that has exactly, what train they're supposed to take, what time it departs. It's written in English and in Japanese. So if they need help, they'll go, huh, and the Japanese person go, right?
yeah,
And off
yeah.
and off you go, because that's also, having it in both languages really makes it easy for travelers to figure out where they're going to go. It's also in English so that they can, they go Kanazawa. Okay, they don't have to worry about how to read the Japanese, but it is available if they do need help from the people there. And if you're in a station like Shinjuku, we highly recommend ask before you get lost, because you will get lost. My son tells me,
That's guaranteed.
yeah, my son tells me, yeah, they have staircases and escalators like they have at Hogwarts and Harry Potter. The ones that move into different places and will change. Wait, I went up this one, but now I'm in a different place. And he lives in Tokyo, so if he's saying that, then It's pretty nuts in that. But yeah, go ahead, ask first, and just like simple advice like that. First, ask, then try to figure it out. Don't some places it's just not worth trying to figure out.
I agree. And I have just questions with, has the activities and locations, people reaching out to you through Rediscover tours kind of stayed the same, or has that changed, recently within, last, couple years?
You mean like where our travelers are from, or what they're looking to do?
Like what they're looking to do, like if
Okay.
that request, of things, is that changing, or is it still kind of a similar grouping of things?
It's a very similar grouping of things. Most of the time, people, they wanted, a tea ceremony is very popular. We've recently partnered up with a ryote, which is a type of Japanese restaurant, high end restaurant, to have a geisha dinner with actual geisha. That's something before, if you wanted to go to an actual geisha or have them perform for you, it's still a very, very closed world, but you had to be personally introduced and guaranteed by someone who was a client of that tea house, which made it almost impossible to get into. That world has opened up a little bit, and we've also worked on prying it open a little bit for us and establishing our trust, because in Japan, your word is really important, and the trust and that face is very important. So we've now had that. It's not cheap, but when you figure that the woman that is doing that has studied, many many years, student is probably wearing $30,000 $40,000 worth of clothes, you realize, okay, then that has to be the way it is, and we set up that. We've also found that there's a little bit more availability. The laws in Japan have changed a little bit so that you can, someone can guide you without a super formal license. So you can go, if you're a sumo expert, you can more easily guide people. Before, you had to have that travel guide license, which was, I was told is, the most difficult license to get, just about. And they said it had like a 10% first time pass rate. My opinion was it was overkill, but you don't want to go to the other one where anybody could just go, yeah, this is ginkakuji and it's made of wood. And yes, that's gold leaf, right? You want to have those guys not be able to do that. But there's a lot more, I think, interest in food, especially izakaya tours, the type of restaurant. We have one that's really very touristy. It's a sumo lunch or dinner thing where they actually have ex sumo wrestlers come out, not the big famous ones, but the guys who are retired coming up, and they'll demonstrate it. They'll do it in English. They'll serve you chanko nabe for lunch or dinner. And that's, we're seeing more of those sorts of things, that people are saying, huh, this is kind of fun. People like sumo. Getting into a sumo tournament is really hard because they sell out very, very quickly. But this is a way to do it. It's a bit touristy, but once again, it's okay to be a tourist and to learn about this. And you can go and try to move these guys if you want. And the guys just they don't move, no matter how hard you hit them. That's just not, they're trained not to move. And so even if you're bigger than them, I've seen guys that are bigger than the sumo wrestler, but sumo wrestler won't move and can just move these guys like they're on roller skates, just about. But I've seen a lot more of those sorts of things, and also like opening up more rural Japan. So there's a lot of rural cycling tours that are coming up, and to get to more towns, and more towns are interested in having tourists there. So there's been a little bit more outreach for that also, as long as it doesn't rain. That's always the issue, right? And they have e-bikes, and it's not like a full-on cycling, Tour de France sort of thing. It's just wander around. It just makes it easier to get from point to point, really. And I also like a lot of times tourists aren't able to see the places between the 2 points. So if you're going to Ginkakuji and then Fushimi Inari, temples and shrines, right? There's a lot in between that isn't necessarily worth stopping at, but if you're on a bike, you'll see the neighborhoods, you'll see the kids playing, you'll see kind of the normal life, the grocery stores, and you might, stop in a standard grocery store and just, what's this sort of idea, which is a lot of fun. And then just the whole atmosphere of a grocery store, especially in Osaka, with the whole what I call the irashai spirit, the guys shouting at you, come on, try this, here, this. And having that is just a lot of fun, I think. So the destinations in between the main destinations, I think, are also important. And that's also something you can do when you just wander around.
What are the biggest challenges you're facing? I mean, the country's open, so that one has it got. But what are the challenges like your role and your business right now
Yeah.
is kind of trying to tackle?
For the past year, we've been working on our capacity. So we've invested money in a communication system by computer, CRM idea, getting that customized. We've been working on hiring staff, training staff, and making sure that the people that we hire understand our dedication to excellence, and all of our core values with that, and trips of experience, responsible trips, and also, the idea of trips of experience means their experience, not my experience, not my, what's doing with that, getting people that are, that have that dedication to excellence, that are going to be doing that, has been challenging. And then getting them trained to do it has been an interesting challenge, especially being closed for 3 years and not really being able to do that. Luckily, the Japanese government was there for our team in Japan and paid their salaries, or big chunk of their salaries, so that we could maintain that. That helped. But then, really, finding people is tough. And as weird as it sounds, the exchange rate has been bouncing all over the place, right? So it's gone from
Yes.
like 130 up to 160. Now it's at 150, and trying to figure out what's going on with that. Also, hotels have changed how they do things. They are going for more what's called dynamic pricing. So it's kind of like what the airlines are doing. Oh, today the room is, 20,000 yen, but tomorrow it's 25. Right. And you're like going,
Yep.
why? Well, because you searched for it twice. You're obviously interested in this, or, those sorts of things. I don't mean it in a nefarious way, but it does make it harder to figure things out. The first year, it was really hard just to find rooms for people because, the first year was open, there was no room. Guides also were hard to find because guides went and started doing other work. So it was harder to find good guides. And we are very critical of our guides. We don't want someone that says, here's Ginkakuji, it's covered in gold, it's made of wood. Next. We want to make sure that our guides are flexible, open minded, and like people. Right. And those are really important things. I guided one tour back in 2006. I'm not a good guide. I like people, but I tend to get overwhelmed once there's too many things. I'm just like, and I can't just calm down. So I'm not a guide, right? I can do other things very well. I can help people, I can do it. But with that, so we want to also make sure that our guides not only have that knowledge, but are, that like people, can handle a stressful situation, can have 3 million different ideas thrown at them and still figure out a way to make the traveler smile. And that's a kind of special person. And a lot of those people went during the pandemic and got other jobs, started doing other things, became interpreters or other sort of work that they could do. So those have been some of the main challenges right now. And then, next year it's going to be different challenges. So we just keep on going. And I really think in a business, you really need to always have some challenges. Otherwise, that means you've kind of given up. The person that just sits down and does nothing all day is given up, right? The person who has some problems, who has, like keeping keeping the podcast going. You're like, okay, I need to find somebody. I need to find 5 people in this, thing. I have four all lined up. Where's the next person going to come from? And that sort of stress, that sort of thing is a natural thing. And it's because you're constantly, doing that, and that causes you some stress, but that's not necessarily a bad thing. It's thing.
Right.
So we keep on going, keep on growing, keeping the team well, managing a company with offices in two different countries. We also have one person in the UK who works for us. Keeping everybody focused in and getting their work done is a bit of a challenge. But like I said, I'm pretty blessed with who works with us, who's part of the team. And it's not, except for me, of course, everybody is fantastic. So it's really a nice, everyone's got their act together. Just when you're dealing with me, that kind of falls apart. But those are some of the challenge that we've had with dealing with Japan. And hotels also. Japan built a ton of hotels during the pandemic, and they all got filled up that first year. Now they're still pretty much filled up because Japan. I don't have any like actual proof, but it's probably just my gut instinct is it's kind of in a travel bubble right now. It's kind of
Yeah.
got that boom going, and it'll flatten out later on as people realize that my brother's in furniture, and furniture but went crazy sales during the pandemic because people were home. Right now he's having a hard time because people have their furniture and now they're spending all their money on travel. I do believe it'll balance out. Like I said, I don't have any I didn't look at any research or anything with this is my gut feeling. So but I do believe that it will settle out to a point where things can go on. There are also, I think, more travel companies that are coming into the market, and that's also going to have issues that we have to deal with, but it's all fun, so it all works out.
No, and like you said, having someone like yourself and your company, like I said, if they're, if Jeff's willing to talk with me back 3 years ago, as I'm, kind of starting off with things, and then he's kept in touch throughout
Yeah.
the time, and tried to get me in contact with people and others in contact with myself. If he can go through, do all that different things for, yes, we met virtually, but never met in
Yeah.
person. I rest, easily assured that you're going to have a fantastic time with him.
I appreciate that.
So please, do definitely reach out, and having someone who has been established and has some contacts that can get you something like the, meeting with the geisha or other that are here that have those relationships built up themselves, is going to open up even more to you. So, it's all good things, and I truly appreciate it, my friend. And we're kind
Thank
of
you.
nearing our end. It's getting to that time, but
Yeah.
I wanted, before I have my final question for you, most important question I'm going to save for last, but do you have anything that we haven't talked about yet that you want to share before we move on?
Travel, be open minded, try is the biggest thing. I tell people, when you go to Japan, you walk into a restaurant, most menus have photos. Point at something that you've never seen before. Try it. If you don't like it, that's fine. You don't have to finish it. You're not going to insult anybody. And, say, okay, I've spent my budget on something I don't like for food. That's okay. There's going to be a 7-Eleven, a convenience store, or a bakery down the road. 7-Eleven and convenience stores are good in Japan. They don't have those, the rotisserie hot dogs, so to speak, in them. They do have some junk food, but generally speaking, the food's really good, and you can get enough there, to eat. So just try something within reason. Don't go too scary for yourself, but try it. You never know that food that you're looking at that you're not like, I don't like that. That might be your favorite all-time meal. You don't know until you try it. That could be your, the thing that you love the most, right? Like, or you're looking at sashimi or some sushi. Go, I don't know if I like raw fish, but you pop it in your mouth and you go, oh my gosh, this is the most amazing thing I've ever had in my life. You don't know until you try it. You might say, pop it in your mouth and go, oh my gosh, this is not me. I am not happy. That's okay. There's a convenience store down the road. In almost all situations, there'll be a convenience store down the road that will have a bento box lunch for you, or will have an egg sandwich in a bag, something that you can eat to get enough calories to survive and to go. So that my big recommendation is just try something. You never know. It might be the most horrible thing you've ever tried in your life. That's okay too, because now you have a story, right?
100%, 100%. And before we get, I lied, Jeff, horribly. I have one more question before we get to that final one, which you have set up so nicely. But I just wanted to ask what your goals were for Rediscover tours, being that we are getting closer and closer every day for 2025.
Yeah.
What are those goals that you have coming up?
Yeah, to continue to grow the company, to get it to the point where we have, 5, 6 salespeople based here in the US, a large team in Japan, 10, 15 people in Japan setting up the tours, where everybody's able to communicate well. Eventually, if we can get to that point, I would like to start doing similar things with other countries. Korea is coming up, South Korea, Vietnam, those sorts of ideas, because I really believe that travel is a great way to, learn about cultures. It's also a really fantastic way to learn about other people and to say, oh, this is really good. I like this person. Oh, I don't like this person in this country. Okay. All country has their all countries have their fair share of jerks and
Yep.
their fair share of good people. And if we're truly honest with ourselves, sometimes I'm the jerk. Sometimes you're the jerk. That's just the way it is. I was driving today and I accidentally I didn't cut the guy off, but I didn't let him enough space to come in. I didn't realize there was a lane closure. I'm like, oh, sorry, dude. That was my mistake. I'm sorry. You can yell at me all you want because that was not cool. I didn't do anything illegal, but yeah, in
Yeah.
that case, I was the jerk. And and I believe that travelers need help and want help. They don't want to necessarily have to do all the work. Some people, that's what they love, figuring out all the details, doing the research. Other people, no, they just wanted to kind of the Japanese phrase is omakase, right? Meaning you just take care of the details, just like with my taxes. Here's all the stuff. Keep me out of jail. Or painting my
Yeah.
house, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Anybody can paint, but I can paint. But I look at it and go, wow, I'm not very good at that. Right. Or my color choice is not as I would like. So we're looking to also take it, thing that's probably still 5 years away, but
Mhm.
that's where we would like to take it to the next step in order to continue the service that we're giving people, so that more people can enjoy more travel and not have to go on a large group tour. That that's fine for some people, people who want to go on a more social thing, but the market that we're going after are the people that want to experience the culture and go out on their own, kind of go outside their comfort zone a little bit, to go, oh, this is kind of like Anthony Bourdain sort of ideas. That
Yep.
sort of image is what we're looking to build.
Love it. So that final question you were leading into nicely before I got our questions out of order. Um, if you're going to grab something from the konbini in Japan, what is some of your favorite things that you like to grab?
There's a number of things depending on my mood. I like, my favorite cheap chocolate is Ghana chocolate. That I always buy a couple bars while I'm in Japan. I get onigiri, of course, with ume onigiri. That's just one of my standards with that. And there's also this bread that I like. It's melon bread.
Yep.
So it has, it's the bread, and then it has this, I guess, melon flavored sugar sort of thing on top of it. It's sweet, but the bread is not sweetened as much. So it has that nice contrast to it. And those are kind of, the things that I generally will go to in a convenience store. And, but yeah, or if if I don't have time to make a lunch or something, I'm going off getting there a bento to have on the train is a wonderful way of getting some good food. And you can even get, sushi there, sashimi. And it's not like, gas station sashimi that we kind of joke about here in this country. It's actually pretty good and is fresh.
Really is. Jeff, just thank you again today so
Thank
much
you.
for joining us. And I really can't tell you enough that go ahead and visit rediscovertours.com. Check out all of the offerings that are there. Look at the pictures. Fall in love with Japan as you're kind of, looking through what they can do for you, and reach on out, and you will definitely not be disappointed. But just thank you again, Jeff, for joining us today.
Yeah, thanks, Mike. I really appreciate it. And, as always, if you're looking for other people to talk to, let me know what you're looking for, and I'll see if someone fits within my network.
Appreciate it, Jeff. I do. I do. Um, Thank you so much. Thank you, everybody. On behalf of Lost Without Japan and the entire crew, I'd like to thank you for joining us today for this interview. We look forward to seeing you on board again for our next regularly scheduled episode as we continue our discussion on Japan, travel, culture, and your Lost Without moments. To everyone out there, Oginki Day, stay well, my friends.